To start off my third video commentary about Tibet, I would like to start off with some corrections to my previous video called True Reason Behind the Tibetan Riot. First of all, I made a mistake in the prices of the train ticket fare from Beijing to Lhasa. A one-way ticket cost 1,262 Chinese yuan right now, which is almost 200 US dollars. The ticket includes a bed for the journey. However, there's a cheaper ticket, which costs roughly 400 Chinese yuan, which is around $50. But you would have to sit in a plastic seat for the entire duration of the trip, which is not pleasant. And let me tell you, even 400 Chinese yuan is still a lot of money for them. Secondly, I would like to address to the presence of natural resources in Tibet. Tibet do have a considerable reserve of minerals. However, they are located 5,000 meters above sea level with harsh conditions. It is hard enough to get to those locations, let alone a mining facility. If they could have been effectively mined, the government would have done it years ago. Someone commented that there is a rich wildlife in Tibet. Yes, that's quite true. But can you feed off wildlife for a long time? I don't see how a 2 million population can feed off wildlife. Arable land. There are barely any in Tibet. Even China itself lacks arable land. 9% of China is arable land. Even China itself imports food from neighboring countries. And Tibetan economy is dominated by subsistence agriculture, meaning the farmers only grow enough food to feed the farmers themselves and their families, and to able to run the farmer again next year. As you can see on a map, most of Tibet is mountainous region, and only locations in Tibet where you can farm is in the Tibetan plateau. However, even in the plateau, the soil is not very rich. The topsoil is usually only a few inches thick. And the Tibetan social system is heavily subsidized by the government. Tibet pays no tax to China, and the Chinese government funds all the social infrastructures in Tibet. For example, the policing, the firefighting, the hospitals, and the schools. Tibet population grew from 1.2 million in 1950 to 2.62 million in 2000. Population growth is due to an abundance of food and shelter. So, where did the food come from? I had a fellow YouTuber asking me a question. Why do the West care so much about Tibet? To answer this question, let's start with some history. Starting from the late 1800s, China as a nation was mutilated with occupation and unequal treaties that took away Chinese land due to the weakness of the government. Russia took a large portion of the northeastern part of China. Japan took Manchuria. Germany took Shandong. Portugal took Macau. The British had Hong Kong. A number of foreign nations shared Shanghai. I don't even want to get started on Opium War. It was a dark chapter in the Chinese history. This is why China is desperately developing its economy and the military in such a pace. China wants to be a unified power, so no one can ever call the Chinese weak and put shame on their names again. This mentality is similar to the Israelis. The Israelis have one of the best armies in the world, so they would never have to endure another Holocaust. You see why China have a very, very tough policy against any separatist groups. So, do the West really care about China's politics? Well, sort of. They really would like to keep their Walmart stores and dollar stores in business. For all they care, they simply want China to be this huge vending machine where you can toss in a penny and get tons of good stuff that you can sell for a massive profit among the North Americans. The West do not want China to be a powerful nation, though. They do not want another competitor in science and technology. They do not want China to have too much to say in world politics. They want China to be a cheap factory so they can take advantage of China. In order to do so, separating China would be the best way to do it, just like all the other nations I mentioned in the previous video. The words human rights problems are being attached to China in every article possible. The topic of my next video commentary would be about the real human rights problems in China. So, do the Western powers really care about Tibet? Well, sort of. Tibet is a tool for them. A tool to generate this hippie culture where chanting out free Tibet is cool because it's for freedom. So hundreds of young Americans, Europeans, wave their Tibetan flags. I wish they went to Tibet instead, or read on some history books instead of just blindly following in what they are told. So, in 1959, after the revolt in Tibet, a portion of the Tibetans left Tibet to India with the Dalai Lama. They slowly emigrated to other parts of the world. Their sons and daughters are well into adulthood, being taught that their Tibet motherland is being oppressed without having ever been to Tibet. And they are also being used as a tool. They are a mere tool for the West to take a grip on China when they need it. When they don't, those ethnic Tibetan protesters were regarded as a mere nuisance. For instance, in 2000, the former Chinese president Jiang Zemin took a European diplomatic tour. He was actually out shopping, with his pockets filled with a couple of $1 billion. The Europeans had their eyes fixed at making those deals and to have the cash roll in. A few protesters appeared in UK, France, and Germany when the former president was on tour in their country. Guess what? They were brutally beaten by the local police. And they were dragged into police vehicles and were taken away. You know why? Because they were potentially a threat to those money deals. Germany and the UK did not want to lose $1 billion because of them. So at that time, they were seen as a nuisance, so they were beaten. Capitalism worships money. And then comes democracy and freedom. The media, do they really care about Tibetan riots? Sure they do. Their report is between the traffic and the weather for about 30 seconds. The Canadian Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, who happens to be my high school alumni, he made a comment when he was asked by a journalist if he had any pressure meeting with the Dalai Lama because of the Chinese government. Well, he answered something like this. What am I supposed to do? Take the Dalai Lama to a hotel? Well, I'm not going to comment on this, but you see the reference. So this is how West thinks of Tibet. This concludes my third video commentary. Thank you very much.